For over a century, the dominant theory in cancer research has been the genetic model. According to this view, cancer begins with mutations in DNA that cause uncontrolled cell growth. However, a growing number of researchers are challenging this belief and turning their attention to a different cause: metabolism. One of the leading voices in this field is Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who proposes a metabolic theory of cancer that is both revolutionary and controversial. Seyfried's approach stems from the work of Otto Warburg, a German scientist and Nobel Prize winner. In the 1920s, Warburg observed that cancer cells behave differently than healthy cells in how they produce energy. While most healthy cells generate energy using oxygen in the mitochondria, cancer cells rely more heavily on fermentation, a less efficient process that doesn't require oxygen. Warburg believed this metabolic shift was a key feature of cancer. Dr. Seyfried has built on Warburg's work and provided modern evidence supporting the idea that cancer is primarily a metabolic disease, not a genetic one. According to Seyfried, the root cause of cancer is damaged mitochondria, organelles inside the cell that are responsible for energy production. When these mitochondria are injured or dysfunctional, cells are forced to use fermentation to survive, leading to uncontrolled growth and tumor formation. One of the striking aspects of Seyfried's theory is how it challenges the genetic dogma. In experiments where nuclei from cancer cells containing mutated DNA are inserted into healthy cells, the result is often a normal cell, not a cancerous one. On the other hand, when mitochondria from cancer cells are placed in healthy cells, the healthy cells begin to show cancer-like behavior. These findings suggest that something outside the nucleus, specifically the mitochondria, may play a more central role in the development of cancer. Another important concept in the metabolic theory of cancer is that cancer cells are addicted to glucose and glutamine. Because they rely on fermentation, they need large amounts of these nutrients to grow. This has led to the idea of using dietary interventions as part of cancer therapy. For example, the ketogenic diet, which is low in carbohydrates and high in fat, reduces glucose availability and forces the body to rely on ketones for energy, something cancer cells cannot efficiently use. Dr. Seyfried suggests that restricting glucose and glutamine can create an unfavorable environment for cancer cells, slowing their growth or even killing them. He calls this approach press-pulse therapy. The press involves chronic stress on cancer cells through nutrient restriction, while the pulse involves short bursts of additional therapies, such as hyperbaric oxygen or specific drugs, to enhance the anti-cancer effect. While this theory is compelling, it is not without critics. Many researchers still believe that genetic mutations are the main cause of cancer and that metabolism is only a secondary consequence. They point to the thousands of identified cancer-related genes and the success of some targeted therapies that address specific mutations. However, the metabolic theory offers something that the genetic theory often lacks: a unifying explanation for why so many different types of cancer behave in similar ways. If cancer were purely genetic, one would expect each tumor to behave very differently depending on the specific mutations. But in practice, many cancers share common traits, such as the preference for fermentation, resistance to cell death, and abnormal growth patterns. These shared features make more sense under a metabolic model. One of the most hopeful aspects of this theory is its potential to empower patients. Unlike gene mutations, which we cannot easily change, metabolism is influenced by lifestyle. Diet, exercise, sleep, and stress management all affect mitochondrial function. This means that individuals may have more control over their cancer risk and progression than previously thought. Moreover, metabolic therapies are generally less toxic than traditional cancer treatments like chemotherapy and radiation. A ketogenic diet, for instance, has few side effects and may improve the quality of life during treatment. Other non-toxic approaches include intermittent fasting, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and certain supplements that support mitochondrial health. Dr. Seyfried and his colleagues advocate for a shift in cancer treatment protocols to include metabolic strategies alongside conventional therapies. They argue that combining metabolic and standard treatments could improve outcomes and reduce side effects. Despite its promise, the metabolic theory faces several hurdles before it becomes mainstream. Clinical trials are expensive and time-consuming, and there is limited financial incentive for pharmaceutical companies to fund studies on dietary therapies. Additionally, most oncologists are trained within the genetic framework and may be hesitant to adopt new paradigms without overwhelming evidence. Nonetheless, patient interest in alternative and complementary cancer therapies is growing. Many are already experimenting with ketogenic diets or fasting protocols alongside standard care. Some early results are promising, though more rigorous studies are needed to confirm their effectiveness. In conclusion, the metabolic theory of cancer, championed by Dr. Thomas Seyfried, represents a significant shift in how we understand and treat this complex disease. By focusing on the role of mitochondria in cellular energy production, it offers a new lens through which to view cancer, not as a random genetic accident, but as a predictable consequence of metabolic dysfunction. This shift opens the door to more personalized, non-toxic, and potentially more effective treatments that address the root cause of cancer rather than just its symptoms. As research continues, the hope is that this approach will lead to better outcomes for patients and a deeper understanding of the nature of cancer itself. This metabolic perspective doesn't just challenge conventional wisdom. It opens the door to a future where cancer prevention and treatment are no longer ruled by randomness or luck. If cancer is fundamentally a disease of energy failure, then restoring the body's energy balance could become the cornerstone of therapy. Think of it not as a war on rogue DNA, but as a rescue mission for the cell's power plant. The mitochondria don't just produce energy, they orchestrate cell survival. When they fail, the body's internal logic collapses, and chaos follows. Cancer is that chaos. So what does this mean for you and me, sitting here in a world saturated with processed food, chronic stress, sedentary lifestyles, and disrupted sleep cycles? It means our modern way of living is a breeding ground for metabolic dysfunction. We are unknowingly building the perfect environment for cancer to thrive, and that's terrifying, but also empowering because metabolic health is, to a large extent, within our control. It starts with nutrition. A diet low in sugar and refined carbs, rich in healthy fats, clean proteins, and fiber doesn't just sound trendy, it's a metabolic shield. Intermittent fasting, or time-restricted eating, gives the mitochondria a break to repair themselves. Regular movement, even walking, stimulates energy production. Sleep isn't just rest, it's when the body runs critical maintenance protocols. And chronic stress? It's like pouring sugar into the engine. Mindfulness, deep breathing, disconnecting from endless notifications. These aren't luxuries. They're survival tactics. The science is still evolving, and Seyfried's theory isn't without critics. But even if you only accept part of the metabolic hypothesis, the practical advice it offers is undeniable. By focusing on lifestyle, on how we eat, move, breathe, and rest, we're not just improving quality of life. We're taking back control from a disease that has terrorized humanity for too long. Cancer doesn't have to be inevitable. It might be a signal, a message from your cells that something fundamental is broken. And maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't locked in a lab, but waiting in your kitchen, your habits, your mitochondria.